Let's get this party started. Let's get this party started. Here's Peter. Woo, woo. I don't just look up, Peter. It doesn't work.
I am not used to the Bairnt energy, and certainly not at 9 in the morning. That is for sure.
He always brings it. Welcome everybody to Co-op Guild. We are here with our weekly live chat about various board game topics with a cooperative focus. So I see lots of. Okay, well first I gotta say who's here. Of course, Bairnt's here, and
I'm here.
Peter from What's Up Co-op is here.
Sorry, I didn't hear where I'm from. I overtalked you.
No, you're good. So no, I'm happy. I'm happy we managed to get you on. So I know it's early morning for you, so appreciate it.
It is. I mean, it's not like I just sleep in every day. Like
No.
I do get up early in the morning, but
Well, I know you're busy.
I'm
Let's put it
just
that
usually
way.
not talking early in the morning.
I see lots of friends here. See, hey Matt, how's it going? Morning. Hey Greg. Hey Spycom, how's it going? Ryan's here. Other Ryan's here. Multiple Ryans here. All the Ryans are here. Oh, Robin's here, of course. The Bairnt energy's coming up through the floor.
Right. Probably just woke my kids up.
Hey Jan, how's it going? You didn't miss anything, Jan. We just started. Hey Kim. So, okay. Yes, so we're here to chat about difficulty settings in board games, especially when you're getting into them as an introduction. But I think it'd be kind of fun. Peter brought this up, and I used to do this in the past. I don't know why I stopped, but I think it'd be kind of fun to just talk about what we've been playing lately, just recently. So, Peter, how about you start?
You want me to stay focused on co-op stuff?
It's fine.
I mean, I've certainly played enough co-op stuff.
Whatever you play is fine.
Well, just last night. Well, all right. So just last night, I played Path of Civilization, which isn't even out in the US yet. So it was an online implementation. It's a Civ game that plays in about an hour, but like actually feels like a Civ game. It's all card based, where you're basically drafting cards, you're moving up tracks, and then you're spending like after you move up the tracks, you're spending that to like buy more cards, and you get wonders and new leaders, and it's all in place of like placing cubes around this board. There's like 5 places you could place cubes, and each place does something different. Like if you place on the like building track, you build wonders. If you place on the like culture track, you can get leaders. If you place on, you know, military tracks, it's like for end of round scoring, where you like do these combats, which are basically like, you know, area control, because it's like whoever gets first gets the most points, whoever gets second gets the second most. So there's not really a whole lot of player conflict in there. There's certainly racing to get better leaders and get better wonders. But it was just really neat. It was only my first time playing it, but I'm looking forward to trying it solo, and I can't wait for a US release date. That's the one thing I did immediately after I looked, and I'm like, all right, when's this coming out in the US? And I don't think there's anything listed yet. I think it was up for sale for a while, but then people realized, no, maybe it's not coming out as soon as we thought it was.
Okay, so it's solo and competitive, you say. And how many players?
I think 1 to 4 or 5.
Okay, cool.
We played 2-player, and it was fine. You know, again, because it is a little bit of multiplayer solitaire, like I didn't feel bad that there weren't more players there. Because really the one place you have competition is in these battles at the end of every other round.
Yeah. And
for those, there's an AI. It's like, all right, the first battle, it has 1 combat strength. You know, by the last battle, it's like 14 combat strength, right? So it's at least there to mess up or mess with the scoring a little bit.
Gotcha. Cool. What else been up to? Just anything else?
Well, the other game we played at the end of the night. So because of like just busyness, schedule, things like that, it's usually Jerry, Mike, and I that play Saturday nights.
Yeah.
But Mike's gone to an every other Saturday night schedule, just being busy. So this was the Jerry and I week. So it feels like at the end of every time we do games, Jerry and I, it's like, all right, we have time for one more quick one. And it always used to be Can't Stop, but now it's always Similo. I don't know if you guys have played Similo before.
I have not, but I've heard you talk about that. It sounds fun though.
Yeah, it's on Board Game Arena, and what it is there are sets, right? There's like a spooky set, and there's an animal set, and there's a wild animal set. Don't ask me why there's animals and wild animals. There's like people of history. There's like myths and legends, right? So you buy one of these sets. I think they're like $10, maybe they're $15 for a set of cards, and they just have pictures on them, and they have maybe a brief description of what the thing is. And you put a grid out of, I think it's a 4x4 grid of these, and the clue giver gets 1 as what they're trying to get the other people at the table to guess. And then they get a hand of 5 cards, and they're just putting cards down to that. If they're vertical, it means it's similar to this thing. If it's horizontal, it means it's not. And basically the first round you eliminate 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then the last round it's down to 2 things, and you just got to get the right one out of those 2 things. So it's a very simple elimination game, but it becomes way more fun when you combine sets. So it's like, I'm using myths and legends to get you to guess a spooky or a wild animal or whatever else. Because I think if you stick within a set, you get patterns within your group. So for example, we always do, like, if it's always people, we'll always do like male or female first, right? It's like, all right, if it's a male, like we'll put it vertical. If it's or a male vertical or a female horizontal. If it's a female, we'll put a female vertical or a male horizontal. But when you got animals that don't really have a gender, right, it becomes harder to get those first couple eliminations out. So then you're looking for like, well, this thing's got a mane and this one's got a hat on its head, right? Like, so you're looking for like weird connections, and like there's no way to get in each other's brains. So it just becomes more and more fun as you do stuff like that, just to be like, all right, how did you get that this was similar to that? Like, I don't see that, not even a little bit. It's got a beard, man. Like, that thing's got a beard. It's looking to the left and you can see both eyes. Like, what? How was I supposed to figure that out? Like,
right.
So I think that's one of the most fun parts of it, is just like the breakdown afterward. Like, what were you thinking here? It's like, okay, all right, got it.
What about you, Bairnt? What have you been up to?
Just the opposite of Peter. Just the opposite, 100%. So right now I have Mr. President on the table.
Oh, man.
Which I've made it about 3/4 of the way through a turn in this week.
That sounds accurate.
If anybody knows anything about Mr. President, in theory, a turn takes about 5 hours for me. But you know what? I've actually noticed something about this game that actually is kind of cool. Like I said, it's been on the table for a week upstairs in the dining room. And I can kind of come in, do a few things with it, kind of establish myself again, and then leave again. It's not like something I have to be playing all the time. So it's actually a really cool system in that way. Because, and for those of you that don't know, Mr. President, you are the president, and basically you have inherited what kind of has happened from the last presidency. There's a lot of different randomizations. Your goal is to kind of pass legislations and secure yourself as like this legacy of how good you are as a president, but also not making sure the world goes to war with you or each other while you're trying to do this. So it's a real bonkers game. I'm really impressed with it. I was a little bit hesitant to get it to the table, but once and I think I'm going to say the same thing everybody else does. There's a lot going on in this game, but once you kind of get going, it really falls into like this easily manageable like pieces as you go forward in the game. So that I've been playing that all week, kind of on the table, and then Colin and I have been playing.
I got to highlight this real quick. Ryan's giving me a hard time. He says, "President Bairnt, 4 years of mispronouncing other countries' names." Yup.
Yes, that's probably going to happen.
Man, I almost went political there. Let's just say it wouldn't be the first time we've had 4 years of mispronouncing other people's names. I'm going to leave it at that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm not even political. Like, I have zero politics in my vein, but yeah, I feel like we've been there before.
So yeah, I hope to record it here pretty soon, and we'll see how that goes. The other thing is, of course, Colin and I are running Distant Skies together that we're playing every Tuesday now, and that game is
so fun.
Oh, we played one. Really, we really love what they've done with it, like having even just the picture cards and things like this, just small little things that have enhanced the game so much. And of course, they took out some of the things that are kind of like, okay, well, I gotta do this. You know what I mean? If you kind of got to that mode where you're kind of like, oh, do we have to do this part? Okay, well, we have to do this part. We got to get to the next part, kind of thing. And so,
I love the combat when I first played it, but it did get stale on me after a while. Are you starting to feel that a little bit, where it's like, oh, this is super innovative and cool, and then after a while, I'm like, yeah, I'm just doing the same thing over and over.
We haven't fought anything yet.
What?
We haven't fought anything yet. We've been to like 4 or 5 different places, 6 different places. We haven't fought anything yet.
Wait, did you do the tutorial? There's a combat in the tutorial.
No,
right?
we just read the tutorial. We read the tutorial. We Colin read the entire rule book, and then we started playing. Oh my gosh, Peter! If you would have saw me trying to read this thing, it was the worst experience I ever had. I'm holding this comic book up to this camera, and we have like this up camera. So I'm like holding it up to the up camera, but to read, I have to see the screen that's like over the camera. This like comic book, like, oh, you're flying through the sky. Nope, not sky. Through the clouds. Barely breathe. It was a brutal experience. So we haven't fought anything yet. No, we didn't do the tutorial either. So
now you know why I always streamed on Tabletop Simulator. You have none of those problems. Like, I just hit Alt and it zooms in and we're good.
Yeah, all the nuances.
So yeah, those are the two things I've been kind of working with.
Cool.
That's I'm hoping to get maybe some Kingdom Death here sometime. Hopefully this week, we'll see. Swim team we were talking off camera, and both Peter and I have kids that do a lot of athletics in the wintertime, so our time becomes a little bit harder to manage for other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my
Steve, what about you, man?
Not wintertime for that stuff. So.
Oh, come on, Steve. What did you play? I'm excited to hear this. You just got over being
Champions of the 100 Halls. So this is a preview. It's an upcoming game. How do I describe this game? It feels a little bit like Sentinels of the Multiverse, like modularity, with like choosing like a boss and the location, and then you choose your hero. But it plays a lot like a Magic the Gathering feel. There's no deck building or deck construction in this one. It's just everything's pre-made. But each character has different, unique ways of playing. It's pretty cool. It's interesting because
is it solo
I have a lot of Magic Gathering experience in the back. I played for many years and still have my cards and everything. So it was easy to learn from that standpoint. But I'm curious. I'm curious how easy it is to pick up for someone out there. I'm not sure, but it's been fun. I'm enjoying that one.
I haven't even opened this yet. My jump pack for Lord of the Rings.
Ooh,
nice. There's a One Ring in there. I heard. You better
not in that. Nope, there is not a One Ring in there. Nothing worth anything is in here.
Yeah, the One Ring's been found.
Yeah, no, I know. Steve, did you? Is that solo only?
No, it is solo or co-op, and it's made by Thomas Carpenter.
Interesting.
He's the brain behind it, and it's actually based upon a book series that he wrote. So this is a game based upon this.
So he's an author.
So
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because Magic the Gathering, you usually don't play multiplayer. I guess Commander you can or whatever, but I just curious how it would play out with multiple people. I guess we've seen some examples of this with like Ashes Red Rain and with what's the other one? Ashes Reborn is one, and then there's the that is the Red Rains. What's the other one? Skytear Horde is a little bit of that.
Yep.
I
actually co-op Magic with my son because there were challenge decks they were called. There was 3 of them, and it was basically AI deck, and there was a design to scale up to player counts as well. So, but you're right, it's not very common at all. So, the other thing I've been playing a lot of, and I already have a plan for it on the channel for Monday, is Mythwind. So that arrived. And this is a very cozy, relaxing game where you're playing as different roles. You can be a crafter, a merchant, a ranger, and a farmer. And you are working together, having this story event in this valley and building up a town together. So yeah, we'll be starting that playthrough on Monday.
Our copy of Mythwind finally got released from the shipping, I guess, hands of death. We kept getting things saying like, "Oh yeah, it's lost. Oh, someday it'll get to you. Good luck. Maybe it's in the future." Colin messaged me yesterday. It's here. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm gonna go pick it up and do an unboxing today. That's my goal.
Nice.
Okay, so that's stuff we've been up to. Let's talk about the discussion. So we want to talk about difficult levels in board games, and I want to kind of focus in on early experiences because I still see this popping up on various servers I'm on, people chatting about it, where you open up a game and your first play of it, the game is tuned to be very difficult and challenging, which to put out there is not a bad thing. You know, that is even desired in some cases. But I kind
I'm
of want
gonna
to focus
disagree with
on.
you, but keep going.
Uh-oh. Peter's got a lot to say. That's why Peter's on here. So, and that's where I want to focus is on like how that could potentially uh, get the knock the wind out of your sails to bring us back to the table. If you play the game, you kind of get trounced, and you're just trying to learn the game, right? You don't want to get beat down while you're learning the game. But anyway, I want to kind of start that conversation with you guys and see what your experiences have been.
Well, I will tell you right now, I've experienced both things, and I do like the medium ground. Like I've experienced the kind like for and also I think it has to do with who you're playing with, of course, as well.
Of
But
course.
like for example, I've got my game group. We played quite a bit of games. I put Gloomhaven on the table. I gave them all their cards. I kind of started explaining the rules, and sometimes with my group, if I explain too many rules, it overloads them. And then if you ever play Gloomhaven, all of a sudden they're looking at me going like, I got a hand of 25 cards, and I have to pick 2 of these. What am I doing right here? I don't. What? And all of a sudden, like when they're doing things, okay, now I'm gonna draw from the deck, and my like wife's playing to like 20 points of damage. She holds up a card. What's this one with the 0 on it? I go, oh, you totally missed. Nothing happens. Like what? Like happens. Like and the game boom, back to the shelf. Then we got Gloomhaven Jaws the Lion. Brought it back out, and it was a lot. That one, of course, did the step by step, and I think they did a really good job finding that medium with that one. What I don't like is the ones where it's almost just a straight handhold, where it's like, okay, now what we're going to do is you're going to draw 2 cards, but out of the 50 card deck. But the 2 cards I want you to draw are like Ravage and Bumblebeak or something. And then, okay, those are the 2 cards. Now you're going to roll the dice to see if you hit. Okay, but you're going to roll a 6 and a 4, and that's going to make this happen. Like, it's harder for me to learn a game like that where I'm told exactly what happens. I'm handheld.
But you know, Distant Skies does that, right? That is literally.
That's why we did not do the introduction. And ISS Vanguard did that as well. They kind of did that as a way to teach you the game. And I don't know if that's the best tactic. So there are 3 different ways. And honestly, this is probably one of the greatest topics we've ever had with Peter on here, because as a game designer, I bet you've had to deal with this quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So our first game, I think, bounced hard. Now, I mean, we sold out of our print run, so it's not like nobody bought the game. But because we had tuned the difficulty too high. And so then for future iterations, we've really gone the opposite way and tuned it very low intentionally. So unless you're really making some mistakes, you're probably going to win your first couple of games, or it should be at least really close. And the reason for that is, first of all, we had difficulties in Salvation Road difficulty settings to make the game easier. I don't think one person ever did that. But if you're playing a game and realize it's too easy, like how many people have increased the difficulty if their difficulty settings to make it more difficult. So for me, my preference is to start the game a little bit easy, even, but give people like 100 ways to make it more difficult. Because I've even heard like a lot of podcasts, things like that, where they're like, oh, I just start off on the hardest difficulty. Well, if you're going to do that, that's fine. But they at least know what they're getting themselves into if that's what that group wants. Again, I don't think anybody's going to go, well, this is normal mode. Well, I want to play beginner or I want to play easy, right? And words matter too, right? Like if you call the normal difficulty or the easiest difficulty normal, then people are like, oh, I'm playing difficult setting or I'm playing nightmare mode or whatever. I think they feel better about themselves than if you call like the medium difficulty normal and you go, all right, and here's baby's first co-op, right? And like, who's going to pick that setting? You know what I mean? So,
it's kind of like when you're playing Doom and all of a sudden you're like playing like, this game's hard. Oh, I guess I'll go down to Mommy Don't Hurt Me. Oh, great. Now I feel like an absolute loser.
Right.
That's the only way I can play this game without dying all the time.
Right. But I think video games are more forgiving because you can kind of even switch mid-game. And I think it's harder to do in board games.
Right.
And I think if you just get that terrible kick yourself in the teeth, and you might not even realize that how bad you're losing until you lose your first game because it's your first time playing. You don't even know what's going on. So I do think, for me at least, and I know everybody's different, but for me and for the games we're going to be putting out, we're going to start a little below normal difficulty and then let people ramp up however they want to.
Yeah, that's something I want to talk about because I feel like that is my preference as well, to have a little bit below normal, but also have those levers to crank it up, exactly what you described, Peter. Because everyone has different experiences, but from when I play a game for the first time, I don't well, actually, how do I say this? I try to win, but I don't try to win super hard. I just try to get through the game. Is my on my first play, like just make sure I understand all the nuances
Yep.
and inner workings. For me, I am a type of person who doesn't really care if I win or lose. I obviously try to win, but to me, it's not the really not a big deal to me. But the
Well, here's one of the worst parts too, though.
go ahead.
Like, you want to experience the game, but if the difficulty's tuned too hard, you don't get to see the whole game, right? You might
Right.
lose in 4 or 5 turns, and it's not a good learning experience because you don't get to see the ebbs and flows and how it waxes and wanes in difficulty, because you just get beat before you even get to a crescendo. You just get beat on the crescendo, right? The wave smashing you in the face. So I mean, that is another fear also with some of these things, is that you're not even going to get to the fun part of the game, like where you've built up, where you can do the cool things, right?
Exactly.
Like Marvel Champion is a perfect example. If you played like expert mode from the beginning, like that game takes 5-10 turns to build up. But if you get smashed on turn 3, like that's not fun at all. Now they did a very good job of making easy villains, things like that, to increase the difficulty as they go along. But if they had just gone like Thanos turn 1, right? Like Thanos expert game 1, you're like 3 turns in, you're like, all right, I just got my face smashed in, and I didn't even get to see anything cool that I could do. So I think that could be a problem too.
I think that's kind of the part too, is you want to have the person experience like all the cool parts of the game in the
Right.
first time they play it too. Just at least the ones you want to have them experience. Like, of course, a lot of my games come with campaigns. I don't know if people have realized that. I play a lot of these.
Oh, really?
And Madara, I think, did a very good job in the way that they did it as well. They kind of gave you all the tools for you to experience the entire game for the first 4 missions. And then once that was done, they kind of stripped them back and said, okay, now let's start our game. And now that you've graduated from your play experience. And so then all of a sudden you're in mission 1 of your actual journey outside of the mast, is what they called it. So I thought it was really cool that they gave you all these little items and things that are going to interact with each other, so you can see all the different things that can happen. But then they kind of took that away and then they gave you, after seeing the tools, they gave you an entire toolbox that said, here's all the things. You can kind of move forward going with these, and you can choose what you want. You could even build what we just gave you, or you could try to experiment with some of these other things. And I think that's a really cool way to do it too. I will say that the 4 missions for that game, I think they were a little long. I think you could have probably gotten through it with just maybe 2 to try to experience and see how it all works together. But it did. I mean, playing all 4, then you're pretty much off the rails then, and you're good to go. If you can get through those 4 and you understand everything, you can play the rest of the game without any problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I know did you ever you worked on spare parts for a while, and you're still working on it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. We're very excited about the direction that one's headed. We're actually working on it again on Tuesday. So every other Tuesday, we're recording a podcast or working on spare parts, and then I'm working on it on the off weeks too.
Cool.
And that's going to be a campaign, right?
Yes.
Now,
so we did a mission 0.
Okay.
And we call it mission 0, fully expecting people to play it just the once or once with new players, and then moving on to the full mission. And it gives a little bit of background. It gives a little story, so you don't have to like read a 5-page passage. Like, you're getting why the mechanics are the way they are in the story during that mission 0. So I'm actually really proud of that. It's a shorter mission, way shorter. So normally you get like 2 rooms worth of stuff you got to do with some really hard challenges. It's basically just, we're going to teach you how to do the fighty stuff, and like the rest of the stuff you'll easily pick up, as you go to the other rooms. Like, think about games with like a more complex combat system, but then, there's like story decisions or skill tests or whatever. Like, you don't need to have a tutorial for that stuff, right? Just let's teach you how to do the nuts and bolts of the stuff that you may have a little bit harder time learning in a really short condensed mission, and then move on to like a full length mission.
Do you actually have that in the game where you say, now we're going to teach you the nuts and bolts?
That is, you know what? I might now,
because that's awesome.
Absolutely. You know what? I can change flavor text. Absolutely. We're going to teach you the nuts and bolts of how to be a pilot. I love it. It's going in today.
Well, awesome. Jonathan's got a good comment here. One thing's worth highlighting. Agree with Peter. Love Lord of the Rings, the living card game, but the difficulty is so brutal it almost put me off. Marvel Champions did this way better. I think that's a really good comparison between 2 games, right? Because I love Lord of the Rings as well. It's a really fun game, but I agree the difficulty of that one was very challenging, especially in the core set. The
The
last
four
one,
trolls. The four trolls. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like the third little box set they put out. You have to face the four trolls or something. And I was like, I texted Colin.
No, it's the second mission. It's
Is it the
literally the
second
second
one?
one.
no. The
Yeah.
Four Trolls is a different
pretty
mission,
sure.
but the Hill
Is it?
Troll is the second mission. So there's multiple trolls.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, where you're on the boat or whatever.
My entire collection, and I texted them. We're like, "How do you beat this?" And they're like, "Oh, you have to just deck build better." I'm like, "Deck build me, deck build you. This is ridiculous. Done with this." Boom! All the cards went in the air, and I done. And it wasn't until Lord of the Ring Con that I actually got back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the
exactly.
third mission, you lose one of your 3 characters right from the start. Like, great, thanks for that.
Yeah. That's a perfect example of way too brutal of an intro, I'd say. I understand what they were doing though. Like the very first mission in the core box was, fairly easy. There was some I'm gonna punch you in the face cards that come out, but it wasn't too bad overall. The second mission, and that one was, and this is Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings card game, got a lot harder, but not like insurmountable. It was actually, I think they did pretty good teaching on like different ways of approaching the game. But the third one, was brutal, just brutal.
Well,
And
especially for solo.
Yeah, exactly. It was.
I don't
made
think
for
they planned on people
four-player,
playing
but
that
solo.
solo.
You're right, Peter. Just not working at all. But the thing is, like, what would have been smart, and like you said before, Marvel Champions does is having options to increase the difficulty. Right, you can throw those extra cards in, or change it up, and it still works fine. But yeah.
To be fair, they did do that later,
Mm-hmm.
And I think they even did a better job of like giving you a little bit of pre-constructed options, because that's the other thing Marvel Champions did. It didn't expect you to beat it with like an all green deck or an all combat deck or whatever else. It like built you a couple different options for decks, all of which could at least compete with those missions. Where Lord of the Rings is like, here's a bunch of cards, like go for it. I don't think the precons were good enough either.
Now I'm agreeing with you on this one. Like, I feel like having it easy is fine. Now I want to throw something out there, play devil's advocate a little bit. If the intro is too easy, would that put you off the game?
For me, no. If there was clear difficulty settings where I could make the game harder, absolutely not. Because sometimes I love just killing something. Like in a superhero game, I mean, we're talking a lot about Fantasy Flight stuff. Like Marvel Champions, I love going out there and punching, Rhino in the face. And sometimes to this day, I'll just take a new precon and I'll just like, all right, I'm going to beat something up real bad. And it lets me see all my combos and cool stuff. No, I like feeling powerful in a game.
Okay.
So for me, it doesn't. But yes, I have played games where I go, this game's too easy and there's no real good way to make it harder. And then, no, I do bounce off of it after a while. But as long as you give me settings, then I'm okay with it.
When you said there's a clear way to make it more difficult, is that just like something mentioned in the rulebook is good enough for you? Like highlighted it?
Yeah.
Out?
I mean, I would highlight it several times. You have the difficulty settings at the back, but I even do it in our rule books. We do it in setup as well. Like, hey, if this game's too easy, go ahead and add this card or do this. And then when you add that card, if it's still too easy, there's another, it says, it even says at the bottom of that card, it's like, if you want more difficulty challenge, go to this, and do this. So I do think it's important to have multiple steps, because there are people at different levels. Some people do just want that easy experience so they get the story, whatever else. And I think that matters too. I think the more story in the game, the more forgiving people are for easy being too easy. Whereas if it's a game like the Loop or whatever, where it's not really about the story, it's just about gameplay, I think people are less forgiving.
What do you think, Bairnt? Are you in the same boat?
Yes-ish. I have experience from games, and even there's only been a few games that I've played that even if I have ability to increase the difficulty a little bit, I've still just bounced off it, and only because I wasn't finding a challenge. I I've never really experienced a game where I just want to, unlike Peter, who I know every once in a while just wants to get out his anger as a Hulk and just smash Rhino in the face. I've never been a person that likes to do that. I like to, whenever I put the game on the table, know that I'm going to get challenged in some way. Know there's something that is going to happen that I could lose. And I'm not saying you can't lose the Rhino. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can if the cards all fall completely wrong, but your chances of that are not going to be pretty slim. So when I'm playing a game and I'm finding that I'm just kind of walking through it and I'm not finding any challenge to it at all, those are the games I bounce off of. I guess we're using that as a term because that's awesome. And so, and there's only been a few. There's not too many that happen with, but there have been a few out there. And so they're not in my collection anymore. When it comes to, like, I know I talked earlier, like I don't like being handheld, but if I can get through that and then the game's awesome after that, like ISS Vanguard's a great game, but that initial mission I was kind of like, I could have just read it, but I'm the person that could read a rule book and I'm good to go. Where there are people that need, like, to want to have that help for the first mission so they can kind of see all the intricacies that goes on in the game and see it unfolding around them. And so it's for some people, they're very visual learners and seeing that kind of stuff. We're also watching, like, a lot of people, that's one of the reasons we do playthroughs, is so people can see kind of how the game works and the mechanics that go along with it. And I feel that that's also a kind of a rule book in itself, is being able to visually see everything. So having missions, I think it's really important that a mission can kind of show you most of what a game is going on in a game in the first mission, and then either scaling it back or adding things as it goes a little bit. Like Eiley and Something Shiny is very similar to that. They give you the whole mechanics for the first mission, but then every mission they add a little bit more to it. The Harry Potter deck building game did that as well. They gave you like the core stuff, but then like about mission 3, they added a die to the game that you can use for different cards. They allow you to roll a die now and have different things happening. So they're not feeding you so much more. You can't manage it, but you're still able to at least know the core stuff from the very beginning. And so it's only if there isn't a way, like, I'm trying to think, and the game I'm thinking about in particular did have a way of making it harder. We made it harder. It was still too easy. We found absolutely
right. That's the problem. The problem is not that it's too easy at the beginning. The problem is there's no way to make it the right difficulty for you.
Right. And that was and we're not a group that's going to say like, okay, well, this was too easy. What if we home rule these? I'm like, I'm not home ruling things. I just want to.
No, designer needs to do that.
Right. And if this game is for people that are not we don't find the challenge in the game and don't find the fun in the game, what's the point of having it? I mean, there's few other games we can choose from in this mess, or even in the world. So yeah, I agree with Peter in the fact that to a point, I want to feel challenged all the time in some capacity. I don't want to play a game where I'm just stomping. Colin and I actually stopped playing the Lord of the Rings adventure game, the third one, because I think we had too much understanding of how the game worked. And near the end, we got to the point where we were too powerful. There was like anything we got to, we just stomped through. It was kind of still cool to explore some of these things, but the thrill of doing it kind of started to wane on us. And so we kind of stopped halfway, 3/4 of the way, I think, through that third incarnation of the game.
Well, that's a different problem altogether, because that's a campaign game that didn't scale right from mission to mission, right? And I think you'll see that in Distant Skies too. Like as you get further into it, you become more and more powerful to the point where challenges you were seeing before aren't challenging anymore. You know, and I think that's a problem with any long campaign game. I mean, when you look at Gloomhaven, part of the reason they had this slow burn and this reset after a while is because it's to fight that. It's to fight this. You know, this power creep, whatever it is, where you're just playing the game. And Gloomhaven does something else really smart, which is they say, okay, this is the difficulty you should play on, but if you want a harder game, just pick a higher level of enemies. So you can scale the difficulty yourself for that one as well. So again, I think giving players agency in the difficulty level they want. But I will say sometimes it's not granular enough. So for example, one of my favorite games, Keyforge, it is a competitive game, but they had a co-op mode. And in like normal mode, you're drawing 2 bad cards a turn. In easy mode, you draw 1, and in difficult, you draw 3. Well, those cards were way too big of an effect to really have it work that way. So when you're only drawing 1, it's like you're dropping off quite a bit. And when you're doing 3, it's quite a big jump off. I almost think they should have done like 4 cards as like standard, and then like you could do 3 cards or 2 cards if you're really good, right? You know, so you make that difficulty change more granular so people can find a sweet spot for them.
Yeah. I think it's always going to be fun. I've always found you find a little bit of difficulty, I think, especially in those campaign games, being able to keep it. A lot of that, I think that was the thing in Sleeping Gods, the original we had, and it kind of, they tried to alleviate that, but it also was, it was almost in the vein where it kind of felt like bad because you lost everything. We didn't want to lose everything. It's kind of like when my D&D group, I passed my dungeon mastering to another person and then came back to me. By the time it came back to me, he had given out like his magic. I was like, I got to take some of this crap away from these guys. They're just out of control right now. And so,
yeah.
Okay, we're having this mission where you basically are losing everything. And of course, they felt horrible. Like, I don't want to lose my sword. Like, it's hard to take, really hard to take things away from people if they already have it in a game, of any kind of game. I mean, even when you're playing a video game or something, it's like, it was an awesome experience in Final Fantasy III in America, where all of a sudden after halfway through the game, you're almost start again. And I'm like, I don't want to start again. But then, of course, it was really cool. But when it first happened, you're kind of like, really? I got to start again, kind of thing.
Right.
So it's a hard line to follow.
It's easier. Steve, I feel like we haven't.
Well, I want to pull up some of the comments here are pretty good. So, no, one thing Jan mentioned here, the Assassin's Creed game had too long of an intro, which was I found very frustrating. That was one of my big cons for that one. I had a bias with that going in though, because I played a lot of V-Sabotage, which is a very similar system that Assassin's Creed used. It's the same publisher, but they were teaching it to someone who hadn't seen it at all. And I was like, well, I already know how this works. Let me just get to the game, right? And it was like 4 missions, and they were hard to skip, and that was frustrating. So there's that aspect of it. But the other one I think is a really good comparison is Jonathan mentioned.
Jan said we lost our sound.
Just mine.
No, he said N. Peters.
Lost sound. You guys are good. Oh. You're a beach. The sound is good. It's just Bairnt for a bit. Oh, Bairnt had a weird sound thing going on, I guess. Okay. Okay. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah, we're having Discord notifications too, so I was trying to figure that out, but I think this stopped. So sorry about that, guys. Anyway,
you're talking about Assassin's Creed and how they have that. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I wish you could. When it comes to those kind of games, I wish if they're going to do something like that, you could skip them and start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I really like what the same publisher did for V-Sabotage. They had puzzles, actually. Here is a puzzle. You should be able to solve this puzzle in like 3 moves, and like it would teach you like the mechanics. So it was just an extra thing in the book. It was really, really nice. The other one I would call out is Jonathan's comment about Marvel United, which I think is a really good example. It said, my first plays of Marvel United Core left me with this could be fun with my kids. Then playing X-Men Core and getting smoked started my love for the system, which I completely agree. That's a really good example, because the core was tuned to be very easy. Here's like the example of what the system can do, but it's it's fairly easy.
But that goes to the I mean, that has the problem that we were talking about, which there's not really an easy way to change difficulty in that
exactly
game. And they don't really tell you what difficulty those bosses are supposed to be. Or do they? Do they have easy, medium, hard?
There's no difficulty on those bosses. I mean, to change difficulty, you just remove your wilds from the deck, which it's impactful for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could have been more, right? Or something a little bit different. But yeah, that's a really good example.
But I didn't want to do that because those were my cool, fun cards. So I didn't do that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, don't take away the most fun thing they have. Like,
right.
I don't know. Like for me, that's why I didn't do it. It's like, no, but I like a really, well, again, but that's my personality. I like a really fun, powerful turn every once in
Yep.
a while.
Family Meeple says that difficulty is a sweet spot, a good level of challenge, but not having to continually redo something to succeed without a way to modify. Story is great if it continues, if successful or not. Yeah. So that's the tough part, right? How do you get it so that you don't get stuck redoing games over and over and over again? Which I think it's fun for some people because I know for me, I played Lord of the Rings LCG. I played it almost basically weekly, as much as we can, with someone on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. We played remotely with webcams. It was really fun. But we played it so that we played every single scenario, and we replayed each scenario until we won. And sometimes that was like 5 attempts, 5 or 6 attempts, which at that point is getting extreme, right? To be honest. But we enjoyed that aspect of
Yep.
it. It wouldn't be fun for a lot of people that way, I don't think. And so honestly, sometimes with me, that was getting to be too many. So,
But that's
but
one of your favorite games, and that game is meant to be played one off, so it's fun over and over. I mean, that's the biggest problem we had with Gloomhaven, or one of the biggest problems we had with Gloomhaven. There's no chance I wanted to replay the mission because it didn't feel special or different. So a lot of times when we had that situation, we would just skip it so we could continue on with the story. It's like, all right, we won. Like,
Yeah.
even if we didn't win.
yeah,
No,
that's fair.
I'm with you, Peter, 100% on something like that because you're not the cool thing about Lord of the Rings or Marvel Champions or any of the or Arkham Horror even. I know we're just using LCG as an example of this, but the card decks itself that you're drawing from are you could play them 3 to 4 different times, and the outcomes you're gonna get to different outcomes, and it's gonna have be cool. You have to deal with certain things, but when he's like you said with Gloomhaven, the monsters are all set up in a specific spot. The turn order is then you just start. The only thing that changes really is the turn order and the way those initially the little cards that give you damage change. And at that point, you're kind of like, do I really want to do this again?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Emil has a really good comment as well. Says, we as players are bad at understanding or judging numbers, statistics, chance, which means that we often misinterpret randomness and difficulty in games. When we judge difficulty of a game we have played, we do not understand when we were lucky and the game was not easy, just like when we were unlucky and the game was otherwise rather easy. Which,
Yep.
that's a tough thing to manage, right? I've seen that pop up with some people's comments, like, "Oh, I played that; it was super, super easy. I won." I'm like, "How'd you win that?" And they kind of describe what happened, and you could tell like the cards fell just right for them. Like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's something Matt Leacock calls the cone of possibilities. So it's how wide is that cone, right? So if it's a very narrow cone, you have very little randomness in the game, and the outcomes are going to be similar from game to game without a lot of swing. The wider that cone becomes, the more easy the game could be some games and hard it could be other games. So getting that sweet spot right is important too, because if it's a narrow cone of possibilities, then why would I want to play the same mission over and over? But if it's too wide, then my first experience could be really bad one way or another. So it's really trying to figure out a way to get that cone narrow enough where you're not going to have super bad feel bad games, lose on turn one type games, but yet wide enough where you get replayability and interesting different effects each time you play it.
makes sense.
I wonder, do you have do you have examples of like games that fit those different cones? Like, you said, would Euros fit more on those unwide ones versus like Dungeon Crawl more on the wider scale? Is that kind of what it comes down to, or?
Well, I'll use an example that I've never played, but that Drunagor game that you talked about. You said the thing you didn't like about it was it had a D20, right? It's a D20 system. I'm rolling this D20 every time. Well, we know with the D20, there's more variance than with like a D6, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So because there's so much variance, now you could see it with your rolls in that game, so it's a little bit different. But like maybe you don't know why it's so bad, because like if it's one D20 roll that makes or breaks the game, that's a huge possibility spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you roll that D20 50 times, or you're rolling 10 D20s at a time, that narrows the cone of possibilities. And it's not necessarily whether they have dice or not, because every game's going to have some degree of randomness. And if they don't, then it's really a problem, right? Well, not necessarily. I don't know, because I guess that Noobs in Space game, but it's meant for a one play, right? Games like Unlock are meant for a one play.
Yes.
Where you really don't have a cone because it's gonna be the same thing each time you play it. And so those games have no replayability, right? So I guess there you go. Drew Nagore, one end of the spectrum. Even though I've never played it, a game like Unlock or Noobs in Space, it's pretty linear.
Yeah, we had an experience like that with Madara. Colin, I'm sure, has mentioned this many times. His first experience with Madara that I brought over, and it was a thrashing and terrible experience for him. And of course, he's never going back to it. It's all based on dice roll.
The other thing that's interesting about the dice roll is our Nemo's War has an interesting design.
Oh, yeah.
Because that has a lot of dice in it we're rolling, but the length of the game was designed so that you would do enough dice rolls where you get you should, in theory, get a decent distribution. Because like we were talking about earlier, Peter, if I roll a d20 one time, that's what I get, right? But if I roll a d20 50 times, I'll get a more even distribution of results, right? And so that's why Nemo's War lasts as long as it does in the game, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Now I will say earlier you said players have a hard time judging difficulty.
Yeah.
And I'll say designers do as well. And that I think is where you get the worst experiences with this difficulty scaling is when the designer gets it wrong. Whether they have either not playtested enough or sometimes even playtested too much. We always blame it on, they didn't do enough playtesting. It's not always the case. And I think some of these games where they go, they designed this game to be really hard. I think they just messed up a number here or there sometimes too, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had one more health to every enemy. It's going to make a super big difference in some games where, maybe the designer like made a last second change and they messed it up. Or maybe what happened with us for Salvation Road is we played that game so many times. We got so good at it. And our publisher said, we want this game to be difficult. So we scaled it for difficulty for us who had played it hundreds of times.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't good for a new player experience. And we did play test with new players, but we were always there holding. I mean, that's one of the design mistakes you make as a new designer. We were like literally like, but you could do this or this or this, and not letting them fail on their own because it's hard to watch somebody fail. And so, we were getting 50% win rates on our first games, even with people who had never played before, but they're really getting a lot of help walking through. So you don't come in the box. That's the thing you have to remember. So you have to scale it for somebody who has never seen your game before. And that's hard sometimes. And I think sometimes it's a last second change. I think if we change this number, it'll be fine. It's like, we had something break in playtesting right at the end, like right before you're about to hit print on something. It's like, we'll just change this number by 1. And that could screw up the balance for everything. We've all seen those 1 cards in games that really make it bad for you, right? Like there in Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, which you were talking about earlier, there's 1 card that's 2 costed that removes one of the enemy progress. That card, I mean, just throw it away, rip it up. Because it destroys everything else good that game is doing. And it's so cheap to get. In games you get it, you're going to win literally 100% of the time because there's no way for the enemy to progress. And games you don't get it become very hard or way too hard potentially as well. So there are definitely cards like that can mess stuff up. And again, it's not necessarily that they didn't play test. Certainly sometimes I know some designers and I know some of their games that are even very popular and they don't do a lot of playtesting. And you could tell because there's a 50-page FAQ for their stuff, right? And every one of their games. It's not just one. So, I mean, people can figure that out as well. But I think most of the time that's not the situation. I think most of the time it's, you just made a miscalculation or you made a last second change that really just threw off the balance for everything.
I want to highlight Derek's comment here. I think this is a really good one as well. That's difficult to me isn't bad dice rolling, but the consequences for bad dice rolling. Any game that is brutal for the sake of punishing someone is a turnoff for me, which is another good point, right? If you if you miss a roll, but the effects of that aren't significant, then it's not that bad, right? And I've seen that done really well in some games and not so well in others. So.
Yeah, it's the one fail roll you always remember, right?
It wasn't even fun to try more for me, yeah. Robinson Crusoe can't be brutal for sure.
Yep, we have yet to win that game. Oh no, like I said, we won it once, and after we won it, my wife looked at me and goes, "Wait, why does that say Junior on that card?"
Oh, Junior.
We won the junior version of the Peter Pan one. I didn't realize it was a junior one. Who's we won?
But here's
That's hilarious.
another one that's good. There's a good tie into this. Is it okay to have the game be communicated that it is going to be super difficult experience? Like Robinson Crusoe, I think comes off as that way. It's a survival game. It's supposed to beat you down. If you go into a game with that understanding and you get beat down in the intro, is that okay?
I mean, it's going to be player by player for all this stuff. By the way, I'm
Yeah.
saying a lot of things as if they're fact. It's not fact, right?
no.
Every
We're just
player is
talking.
going to be different. Yeah, I mean, for me, like mission 1 is like the hardest mission for Robinson, right? That wasn't done on purpose. I guarantee it. Like it just turned out that way, right? Like, oh, we're gonna give you more nozzles and stuff to deal with on later missions. Again, it might have been a last second change or whatever. I don't know. I don't think anybody wants their game to be like 95% loose rate. Like, I don't think any designer goes in with that as the intent. But it is so easy to mess it up by just a little bit and make it turn out that way. Like, you know, people are like, oh, I really like this game because they made it really hard. Well, maybe they didn't even do that on purpose, right? Maybe they just messed up a number here or there. So, I mean, the difference between really hard and really easy can sometimes be very minor. And again, I think everybody's going for the sweet spot, right? But just like for me, maybe they were doing it on purpose, but I think a lot of times they're not. I think a lot of times they just mess something up. But that's maybe a cynical view on it.
And I think if a game is like at least published in that vein, at least a person kind of knows going into it and is maybe looking for something like that,
Right?
Like Robinson Crusoe. If it's like if the intent was like, hey, I made a game called Robinson Crusoe, I'm going to tell you the win rate on this might be like about 5%, and you really have to work hard to try to get this win. People might go, oh, I love that challenge, or as opposed to the person like, oh, I'm looking for a great beer and pretzels game where I can just roll some dice. Experience the game. I'm going to try Robinson Crusoe. Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely going to be not what you want to do, right?
Exactly.
So, like Peter says, everybody's got their own like views and what they're looking for in a game, and I think that's one of the things that's cool about the community itself is they have. If you use Board Game Geek, a lot of them you can find some information about a game. We do this a lot. Hey, they're talking like Mike did a thing on this game. Let's take a look at this game a little bit more. We'll go on to Board Game Geek, do a little bit more investigative work, and see it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. This looks like it'd be pretty hard to learn, or this might be a pretty hard game. I don't think our game group's going to enjoy it because there's like the book, all the rules working together and all these intricacies might not fit with our group. Or oh, it's like just going to be a fun, let's roll some dice and hit some bad guys type thing. Like Cthulhu Death May Die. I mean, they had a blast with that because we know that's the kind of game they're interested in. So I think having a community, of course, of all these people also helps as well to figure out what games are good for the type of game you're looking for.
I think one game that does a really great job when talking about all these difficulty stuff is Spirit Island. Just because it has so many difficulty settings. Like you can
that's just what I was going to say. Yep. I was thinking that at the exact same time as you, Steve. I was like, that's a game that can be made really hard.
Yep.
But again, the change in difficulty is just minor, right?
Correct.
You don't go from level 0 to level 1 and it's like this huge jump. I think it's important to give people like that scale where they can make it as easy or difficult as they want. That game doesn't start super hard. I mean, it starts kind of hard, but like you have a million ways to scale it up in difficulty.
Exactly. And speaking of that scaling jump, I think that's highlighted by Keep the Heroes Out, actually. Because Keep the Heroes Out, a really fun game, but on the easy level, it's pretty easy to beat. You're only flipping a couple cards, and then when you play on the standard one, you flip, I think, 3 cards. But that, like you said, Peter, that additional card is a major impact. And so now with the expansion, boss battles, they added the rookie elements. You can shuffle in the deck, and that adds that granularity to be able to tweak between those 2 difficulty settings. It makes it a much better experience. But
yeah, it's super important.
It is. So I think we're approaching time here for, the chat. Oh, Bairnt, you got something?
Right, come on.
What?
Never lost a game Spirit Island.
Yes, you haven't.
Oh, you think it's too easy?
I've never lost. So easy.
You played.
All right, go to level 10
with me.
Go to level 10 and come back to me.
I think I've played it twice with Steve and once with Colin, and I've won all 3 times, so I'm good.
That's like me in trivia with my buddy Jerry. He beat me every time for like 3 years. Last time I played him, I said, I'm going to beat you right now, and then I'm never playing again. And literally 30 years later, we've never played again because I beat him so bad that one time at trivia, and I called my shot before we played, and literally I refused to ever do trivia with him again. So we used to go every Tuesday for trivia, and I even went and like hung out with everybody, but I refused to ever play again after that.
That's hilarious.
So I am the champion of trivia is all anybody ever needs to know. But I mean, the one thing real quickly that Spirit Island does, yes, it does do granular with the difficulty, but for me, it's a little bit of a not to my taste. I love Spirit Island, don't get me wrong, but I don't go up in difficulty, not because I don't need more of a challenge, but because the complexity goes up as you go up in difficulty as well. So I think that's one thing as best as possible for designers. Like, sorry, I'm always going back to design discussions on this type stuff. But like, if you can increase difficulty without increasing complexity, I think that's an important step as well. Because I think for me, I would like Spirit Island to be a little harder, but I'm not willing to deal with that complexity jump to go too much higher.
Good point. Actually, that could be another discussion as well, because we've been talking about difficulty, but having options for just complexity increasing the game without changing difficulty would be interesting. So, like, I think that's another level.
Onirim, right?
What's that?
Onirim in those games do that. They give you something good and they give you something bad.
It's true.
When you add in each of those like mini expansions, so they're more complexity in that game as you play the different challenges without much increase in difficulty.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay, this was a really great chat. I think it sounds like, trying to sum up this discussion, having difficulty levers to pull, right, and a lot of options on that one, a lot of small changes. It sounds like it's probably the best approach when looking at games in general, right? Just as trying to summarize what we have here. So cool. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll try to wrap it up, and that's probably about time for our chat. Let's talk about what's coming up on channels. So I'll start with you, Bairnt. You know what's coming.
We're playing Distant Skies. I might do Kingdom Death Monster video. That's about it. But more importantly, I'm just excited to have Peter here. Peter, it's been so good to see you. It's really awesome to get in touch again with you. I'm really excited for Flame and Fang coming up, and and Short Circuit. I remember, or Spare Parts. Sorry, Short Circuit. Yeah. That's a movie.
That's a movie. It was a great movie, by the way.
It was a great movie. What we've played with you so far on that has been absolutely amazing. It's really great to get like a designer's point of view kind of on some of these things, because I know it's something you guys probably think heavily about when you are working on your games.
Yeah, and the changes we've made, just slight tweaks we've made, make it even better, which is cool, because I know a lot of people have been asking us about that one because they enjoyed their plays of it. I think they're going to be even happier because, you know, design changes. We finished that game 3 years ago and it was ready to publish then. But as things evolve, as things get better, we've put more work into it and made it even a better experience for players. Again, I think a lot of what we're trying to do was cut down complexity without cutting down options, choices, and actually adding more variety within the missions while cutting down complexity. Cool. And event cards are great for that. So like, it lets you kind of throw stuff in. So yeah, something to think about also, a way to change difficulty. Just have easier, harder event cards, whatever else. Yeah, sorry. I don't know. My design brain's working. I'm going to go design some stuff.
You should. Well, don't forget that you want to learn the nuts and bolts of your game.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
All up. No, I'm so glad to have you on, Peter. So, because if we don't, so it's nice chatting with you.
Steve, what do you got going on coming up here? Now that you're not dead anymore. What do you got coming up?
Oh, me.
Yeah, you're the one that just got out of death, like off of the
yes.
Death. Yes, you're back.
I have it on the channel right now a little bit. I already mentioned Mythwind on Monday. The next thing will be Wednesday. Will be a play of Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor, but this will be with Andrew from Brews and Board Games. So him and I are going to be streaming together.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. So that'd be Wednesday.
Nice.
And then Thursday, also doing another stream with Derek from Kanji Studios. We're gonna play Ashes Reborn Red Rains. So we're gonna do that together on Thursday. And then Saturday we'll
Nice.
have another co-op chat planned already, and that is going to include Mike from One Stop Co-op Shops joining, and Danny from Danny Cha, and we're going to be talking about doing reviews for board games. So that's all planned for next week. What about you, Peter? What do you
Mike
got
has
coming
nothing
up?
good to say.
What do you got, Peter? What do you got coming up? You go. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'm not doing any videos, anything like that, except when there's new Marvel Champion stuff. I may do some, like, I'm gonna do some more 5 and 5s. I am planning on doing that, like,
Cool.
but I've done one in the last year, so you know, if I keep that pace up, you know, it'll be good. It'll be good.
Do you read the preview articles? I'm curious. Have you seen Iceman?
I have not. I don't. Honestly, I haven't kept up. I haven't played. So I used to play Marvel Champions every Friday night.
Yeah.
I can't, like, I played stuff to review it and show it off. I haven't played anything since then. So I went from every Friday night to, like, really not playing at all. Now I'm gonna get some free time back soon, and I'd love to. Like, I got all my stuff over here. Like, I'm super excited to get back to it.
Sweet.
I just haven't for a while. But we do a podcast every other week. That's where you can hear more of me and my thoughts on stuff. We're doing Kinfire Delve, should release tomorrow, Sunday. So we're doing that one. And then the one 2 weeks ago was our year-end review.
Yep.
So if you want to hear about 20 games that we played last year and where they ended up on our rankings list, you can find that out listening to the last episode Mike and I were on.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear about Kinfire Delve from you guys. So that was a fun one. I like that game. That's good. Cool. Well, I think we're gonna end it for today. I've got some things I got to run to. My son is in Scouts, and he's got the Pinewood Derby today, which is always an exciting day.
Oh yeah.
That's not his event. That's your event, Steve. This is where you get to prove that you're a man.
So yeah, it'll be fun. But no, thanks, Bairnt, for being on here, of course, as always, and Peter, thanks for taking time out in the morning to join us. It's always a blast talking to you guys. So.
Yep, great talking to you guys. It's been too long.
You all.
Dion's asking about D&D. Yes, D&D's coming back. Unfortunately, both Derek and I have been dealing with death, sickness. So I think we're both back. But it should be coming up soon. And of course, we got some traveling going on. So that's the main thing that's impacting D&D. But we'll let you know when it's coming up, Jan. So.
By the way, Bairnt, I'm gonna Kim called Steve out here. She says, haha, ask him who helped build the car. So apparently it wasn't Steve.
No. Why would I build the car?
You got a point. You've got a professional word worker in your house, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome.
No, it was funny because I would have been cool to see what Kim could do, like, just with her skills. But Caleb has to build it, of course, right? But
yeah,
we'll see. It's fun. So
meanwhile, Steve's car is going to come out. It's got like
D&D. So
yes.
So.
Steve's car is going to come out. It's got like an engine on it. It's honed within half a millimeter of like precision.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my kid totally built this thing. It's got like perfect aerodynamics. It's got like a foil on the back, like a wing.
It's got
or
some
whatever.
exotic woods
like,
on it too, and everything. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, my kid totally did this all by himself.
Totally, it's fine. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time at the guild. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.